Hello, my name is Yojanna Cuenca-Carlino. I am an associate professor in the Department of Special Education at Illinois State University.
I am Sam Whitley. I'm a practicing school psychologist as well as a doctoral student in the special education program at Illinois State University.
On this presentation, we're going to talk about the lessons learned and some recommendations for involving undergraduate and graduate students in intervention research studies in special education. Over my years at ISU, I have had the pleasure of working with different undergraduate and graduate students in different research studies that I have conducted. I have found that it is very beneficial for my students as it enhances the relevance and practicality of research, and they tend to highly value research more once they have participated in a research study. Another potential benefit is that it improves their students' skills because by participating in research, it extends their knowledge and they become more fluent in implementing instructional and behavioral strategies as well as collecting data for making decisions about students' progress. Other benefits that I have found is that once the students or the future teachers or in-service teachers have participated in research studies, they continue to use these instructional strategies and then they become trainers for other teachers in their schools. The other good benefit would be for me as a researcher, it has helped me receive feedback about how the strategies that I investigate work in the real classroom setting. So therefore, I can hone instructional strategies and make them more amenable for large-scale implementation. I divided the lessons learned when conducting research into graduate students, which are in-service teachers, and undergraduate students, pre-service teachers. But first, let's talk about working with graduate students, in-service teachers, and typically these are students who are completing their master's program in special education. The first thing that I do is always have very clear expectations about the research study. We discuss ethical considerations and make sure that all are knowledgeable and have completed the city training and know the IRB process at their school district but also at the institution. Then I dedicate a meeting to outline the study. We talked about research design, we talked about the length, the resources that are going to be needed, and many of these students in their master program have some general information about research design, but they have not got the training yet. So I dedicate many meetings to working with the students and explaining in detail the research procedures and methodology. Every time that we are going to conduct a research study, I make sure that I provide effective training prior to conducting the study in the school environment. Usually we dedicate about 8 hours of training and I model to them the strategies that they are going to be implementing. We discuss the difference between teaching and research. We talked about how to problem solve in the environment and all the different important things about schedules and the importance of continuous communication as we move through the program. Continue with communication. Once the study begins, it's very important that my students, in-service teachers, feel that they can come talk to me to problem solve. So I always in touch with them and communicate constantly to monitor how the implementation is going and to discuss any issues that they might have or questions. A big important part of implementing intervention studies is that the teachers are doing it with fidelity. So we emphasize during the training and throughout the implementation of the study the importance of fidelity of treatment. I ask many of my students to video or audio record their own instruction, and they evaluate themselves by watching the videos or listening to the audio recording, but also that gives them a good understanding of how important it is to be providing this treatment with integrity. Coaching throughout the study and analyzing all the data as they read the report, it's crucial. Many of them do not have the training on how to analyze the data, so we dedicate a lot of time and effort to look at the data together and make determinations about the results and where to go next. The final thing is the writing to publish and presenting at conferences. Typically, when students have conducted research with me, they have completed a paper for their class, but then we convert that paper, fine-tune it. I typically add more information or more in-depth analyses, and then we move into the publication aspect of it. So they do work with me very closely, writing portions of the manuscript and understanding the process of how to submit an article and what goes into it. Some of my students have also presented at conferences. So I try from the beginning to end for them to understand how to outline a study and then the importance of dissemination. Working with undergraduate students is also beneficial, and it's very similar to working with in-service teachers, but pre-service teachers get a little bit of a different experience because they're not yet in the classroom, yet they get an insight into what their classroom might look like. So the same, I always talk about clear expectations, IRB procedures. They participate in the initial meetings to explain the study, and I try to help them make connections to their coursework. So if we're talking, if they're helping collect data analysis, different data sources, we talked about connections that we could make with their assessment course. They also participate in the training that I provide to the in-service teachers, and for undergraduates, I emphasize even more the importance of fidelity of treatment, as they typically help analyze that data. As I said, many of them get insight. Sometimes I have had undergraduate and graduate students work together in research projects, so they develop relationships with their in-service teachers. And the undergraduate students also work in the publication process, so they get a piece of the manuscript, and we go through multiple drafts until it is ready for submitting it for publication. I'm going to give specific examples of the different research studies that I have conducted over the years at ISU with undergraduate and graduate students. First of all, my area of research is self-regulated strategy development. SRSD is an evidence-based practice for teaching students the writing process or the reading and writing process. It incorporates instruction in self-regulation, and it includes teaching students how to set goals for writing, planning, monitoring aspects of the writing process, evaluating one's performance, and revising previously written text. So recent extensions of SRSD has been expanded to teaching math skills to students with high incidence disabilities, whereas in doing it by teaching multi-step equations or word problem solving. No matter the topic that you are teaching, there are specific stages that the SRSD framework follows. So for instance, we have stage 1 is developing an activated background knowledge. If the research purpose is to teach students how to write persuasive essays, in this stage the teacher explains to the students what is a persuasive essay. They discuss the importance about writing, so therefore they're developing the students' background knowledge. On stage 2, the teacher discusses the strategy, including the benefits and expectations. So typically, SRSD utilizes a lot of mnemonics to teach particular strategies. And as a teacher, they also emphasize self-regulation procedures, such as goal setting and monitoring. In stage 3, the teacher models the strategy, pretty much the inner thought process about how to implement the strategy that has been discussed. Stage 4 has to do with memorization, just practicing the steps and memorizing the strategy. And stages 5 and 6 have to do with the students practicing the skill, first with support until they can do it independently. So these are the different research studies that I have conducted over the years, and I actually have testimonials from some of my students that have participated in this research. The first one was about 3 years ago, as I conducted this study on self-regulated strategy development to teach students how to write arguments to self-advocate for their IEP needs. This was conducted in a high school setting, and we did a single subject design. We included one undergraduate student, and Sam was also one of our doctoral students that joined us for some part of the analysis for this study. The outcome, we have 2 articles that are published, one for practitioners, one for about the results of the study, and we presented at national and international conferences. I'm going to share some information or a video that Ruth prepared for us.
My name is Ruth Allen, and I am a special education teacher at Palatine High School. I graduated in December 2014 from ISU, and I was lucky enough to start a job right away after I completed my student teaching in my school district. Now I am currently at Palatine, and I teach junior reading and English and one section of sophomore math for our students with learning disabilities in those areas or behavior disorders. During my junior year of college, I remember feeling like I just wanted to do something more. I wanted to continue learning from my professors, and I also wanted to see if going into graduate work was something I would want to pursue down the road. I was able to connect with Dr. Yojanna Cuenca-Carlino, and she was just about to start her SRSD study with a local alternative high school. So my role was to assist in grading student work, compiling and tracking student data, completing measures for inter-rater reliability, transcribing all the video lessons, and even writing pieces of the final manuscript. Working as an assistant in the study definitely gave me some unique insight into all of the different components that go into conducting a research study. It certainly takes a lot of work. There were many late nights reviewing data, organizing information, making sure the teachers that were involved were sticking to the script, and just going over and over our data to make sure that everything lined up. I had wanted a challenge, and it certainly was one. I learned a lot about myself in terms of managing my time, balancing classwork with the research work. I fine-tuned my writing skills to be able to write at the research level. I learned how to be absolutely meticulous as well as unbiased when collecting data. During my interviews, when I was trying to get a teaching job, I definitely think that being able to say I was part of a research study as an undergraduate helped set me apart from other interviewees, and even more so when I could list publications. I know that at my school district, it is not uncommon for literally thousands of applicants to apply for one position, and so it certainly helps to have something on your resume that sets you apart. As a teacher now, I am incredibly thankful for the opportunity to have done the research study with Dr. C. I feel like I am more willing to try new strategies in my classroom and stay in touch with other research-based strategies that I hear about. It's also encouraged me to be open to conducting a study in the future with a partnering professor in my own classroom. And finally, the experience has solidified my decision to pursue higher education. I'm currently working on my first master's degree in curriculum and instruction with an ESL endorsement, and I fully intend on getting at least another master's, possibly a doctorate, but we'll see. Thank you.
Working with Ruth was a pleasure. The second study that I conducted was on SRSD, and we did this in math. So we taught middle school students how to solve multi-step equations. We utilized a single subject design, and this was a project that started for one of my master's students at his capstone project, and I also involved an undergraduate student that helped collect fidelity of treatment implementation data as part of an honors project. The outcomes, we have one article published from this study, and we presented at an international conference. So here's a video that Grant shared with us.
Hi, my name is Grant Stevenson. I'm currently teaching 8th grade math and writing. I graduated from ISU in 2014 with my master's degree in special education. During my capstone year, I was able to do a research project with Dr. Cuenca and was just kind of asked to talk a little bit about that process and kind of what I learned and took away from that. When I first thought about that, the first thing that came to mind for me was just a new appreciation of what it takes to go into a research project. You read a lot of capstone articles and you read a lot of articles throughout your learning experience, and I think after going through that process, it gives you a much greater appreciation of what it takes to go into those. Additionally, and just in terms of a writer, I gained a lot of skills, I feel, of how to be a more professional writer. And like I said, I'm currently teaching 8th grade writing, and I've taken a lot of those same skills and have been able to implement them in my classroom. And then finally, when I think of research and why that's important to me as a teacher, I think what I probably took away most was it's helped me not to be complacent, and it's helped me really to push myself to look for more effective ways to continue to teach. I've taught math now for over 9 years, and after you teach something, sometimes it's easy to get into routine of what you've done. But what I learned through the research project is there's always ways that you can push yourself, use data-based decisions to really find the most effective strategies that you can implement into your classroom, ultimately trying to help students be as successful as possible. So I feel very fortunate to have gone through the research project and had the help of Dr. Cuenca-Carlino. I really feel that it helped push me as an educator, and that's something that I've tried to use since I completed that. Thank you.
We are conducting currently another study on SRSD with word problem solving and schema-based instruction with high school students as a single subject that we involve in another graduate student for this project. So that is still working in progress, a work in progress. Study number 4, it's a study on SRSD that we conducted with English learners, 2nd and 3rd graders, to teach them opinion writing. These were English learners with and without disabilities, was a single subject design as well. And this was a graduate student completing as well her capstone project. I have had her as one of my students for a previous class where I talked about SRSD, and she then later approached me, wanted to do SRSD with English learners. So therefore, we ended working together, and I also involve an undergraduate student in research outcomes from this study. One article published, and we just submitted to present at a national conference for this project. Here is Mary Elena.
Hi, my name is Maria Elena Gosier. I am a special education teacher at Cedar Ridge Elementary, and this is my 8th year of teaching. I've been in a resource-style classroom for all 8 years of my career, which means I get to go to the students' general education classroom to provide additional supports, as well as pull them out of the classroom in a small group to do some direct instruction or reteaching of skills. I am bilingual, so I also have been fortunate to be a part of our Spanish bilingual program and provide support to students with IEPs who are in that program. So, what did I learn from my research and writing, and how was it helpful? First thing I learned was that research and teaching are in fact related. The research study I chose and implemented was directly related to my students and their instruction. The intervention I chose and implemented enhanced my teaching practices, and the results increased my student performance. So definitely go hand in hand. The second thing I learned was that research data collection is very specific. Therefore, I became better at collecting data on all my students' IEP goals and their progress as a result, which is somewhat simpler than the data collection I was doing for my research. And then the third thing I learned was that when writing about my research, I had to remove myself as a participant and write as if I did not know anything about the intervention or the research that I had done. So in other words, I needed to write thoroughly yet concisely to explain all the parts of my research, because the person who's going to be reading that did not live that like I did. So I wanted to be sure that they really understood each portion of the written document. And sometimes when you think you've said enough, you haven't. You go ahead and say more just to be sure that everything is understood. So then finally, what did I think that doing research as a teacher is important to developing my teaching practices? And definitely so important. Becoming a researcher and an author helped me to see the importance of my work. And sometimes you get stuck in this mindset that you go through each day in a similar manner, and you keep doing that same routine. And seeing how my research directly impacted my students' performance helped me to wake up from that routine. It helped to highlight the importance of being purposeful in my instruction and implementing an intervention with fidelity. It made me feel important too, and realize that I can increase student performance on a grander scale rather than just on the daily lessons or IEP goals. And then finally, by becoming an author, now I've had the honor, really, to share my knowledge with other educators and who can learn from my experience and hopefully implement the intervention with their own students or even expand on my research in the future. So it was a great experience, and definitely look back on it proudly.
So that was Marilena. And Marilena, I was able to ask Emma, an undergraduate student, to actually assist in the research process. So here is a short video from Emma about her experience.
Hi, my name is Emma Krissinger, and I worked as an undergraduate research assistant for the study The Impact of Self-Regulated Strategy Development on the Writing Performance of English Learners. My role was to conduct fidelity checks on the lessons given throughout the implementation of our study. I also tracked student progress on writing samples to cross-reference the scoring with other members of the team to ensure validity across the scoring. I learned through my time working on the study how much time and effort actually does go into research. I also learned how important consistency is in research in order to make the study valid and reflective of what's written. Through writing, I learned that reflection needs to be both detailed but also very concise. I think it's helpful to do research as a teacher so you can understand how to implement research-based practices into your own teaching. I also value evidence-based practices a lot more now, and I do more research for developing lessons and curriculum in my own classroom because I understand how effective they can be. Thank you.
So that was Emma. And finally, I am going to let Sam talk about the other study that we're currently conducting.
So Study 5 is a project that's currently in progress. It's being implemented at a high school, and the goal of the study is to implement the SRSD instructional framework in order to improve the reading comprehension and written expression abilities of high school students with learning disabilities and or emotional behavioral disabilities as well. Once again, we're implementing a single subject research design, and the research team is comprised of 2 doctoral students, one of those being myself, a master's level student, and an undergraduate student under the tutelage of Yojanna. So as an aspiring researcher myself, Yojanna's mentorship has offered me the opportunity to glean at least 4 primary lessons that I've of learning. The first is how to operate as a member of a research team. Research teams are comprised of many disparate personalities and also roles, and so it really requires some applied practice in 1, feeling comfortable with working in a research team, and 2, kind of finding your niche on a research team. The other lesson that I've learned is how to develop and use different power bases in order to execute the tasks of the research project. Yojanna's mentorship has allowed me to observe the use of both referent and expert power bases in order to both lead and then also learn together during the research process. Further, Yojanna's emphasis on applied intervention research has allowed me to understand that you have to have a high degree of flexibility in conducting applied research. Prior to the research experiences that have been afforded to me by her mentorship, I had been involved in several correlational studies, which simply required using a database to perform some statistical analyses and then examine those results. But I have quickly come to the realization that applied research is a whole different beast, and that oftentimes anything that can go wrong will in fact go wrong, and you have to be able to have a high degree of nimbleness in order to either sidestep or overcome those obstacles that will present themselves. And kind of related to that flexibility in applied research, Yojanna's mentorship has allowed me to understand the value in taking a formative approach to research, specifically within the context of the single subject design. Single subject design mandates that you are close to the data. You're continuously monitoring the information that is the byproduct of the study that you're conducting. And the real value in this is that by being that close to the data, you can ensure that all of your participants do in fact reap some sort of benefit from the study that you're implementing.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. So that's all that we have for you. If you have any questions, here are our emails. We'll be happy to answer any of the questions about any of our research studies, but also any other ones that you want to discuss, perhaps about involving your own students in the research. It is very worth to explore the possibility of working with undergraduate and graduate students. It's a great experience. Thank you very much.